Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most epic conflicts in ancient history, the First Punic War. Now, I know what you might be thinking. When you hear Punic Wars, your mind probably jumps straight to Hannibal and his elephants crossing the Alps, but that legendary story is from the second Punic War. The first clash between Rome and Carthage is a monumental tale in its own right, a brutal, 23-year-long struggle that reshaped the ancient world and set the stage for everything that followed. So, who were these two superpowers? On one side, you have the Roman Republic. At this point, around 264 BC, Rome wasn't the sprawling empire we often picture. It was an ambitious, land-based power that had just finished conquering the Italian peninsula. The Romans were masters of land warfare, with their disciplined legions and brilliant engineering. But they were, to put it mildly, amateurs when it came to the sea. They barely had a navy to speak of. On the other side, across the water, was Carthage. Located in modern-day Tunisia, Carthage was the undisputed queen of the Mediterranean. It was a Phoenician city-state, a maritime empire built on trade. Their navy was legendary, their sailors were the best in the world, and their influence stretched from North Africa to Spain and the islands of the western Mediterranean. They were wealthy, powerful, and commanded the seas. These were two giants, a land-based wolf and a seafaring shark, circling each other. A collision was inevitable. The flashpoint, the spark that ignited this massive war, was a surprisingly small island, Sicily. Sicily was a geopolitical powder keg. It was a rich, strategically vital island, split between Greek city-states, independent local tribes, and Carthaginian outposts. The trouble began with a group of rogue mercenaries called the Mamertines, or Sons of Mars. They had seized the city of Messana on the northeastern tip of Sicily, right across a narrow strait from Italy. After causing trouble for a while, the Mamertines found themselves besieged by the powerful Greek city of Syracuse. In a desperate panic, they made a fateful decision. They asked for help from both Rome and Carthage. Carthage, always keen to expand its influence in Sicily, responded first and occupied the city's citadel. This made the Romans extremely nervous. A Carthaginian fortress right on their doorstep. Unacceptable. The Roman Senate, after much debate, decided to intervene. They sent an army across the strait, kicked the Carthaginians out of Messana, and the First Punic War was on. Initially, the war went exactly as you'd expect. On land, the Roman legions were dominant. They marched through Sicily, capturing city after city. The Carthaginians, who relied heavily on mercenaries for their land armies, were consistently outmatched by the disciplined and motivated Roman citizen soldiers within a couple of years. Rome controlled most of the island, but there was a huge problem. As long as Carthage controlled the seas, they could resupply their coastal fortresses, raid the Italian coast, and Rome could never truly win. The Romans understood this. In a move of incredible audacity and ambition, they decided to do the impossible. Build a navy from scratch to challenge the masters of the sea. Legend has it they captured a shipwrecked Carthaginian quinquarema, massive warship with 5 banks of oars, and reverse-engineered it. Imagine this, a nation of landlubbers trying to copy the most advanced naval technology of the day. They built over 100 of these massive ships in just a couple of months, an astonishing feat of engineering and sheer willpower. But building ships is one thing, fighting with them is another. The Romans knew they couldn't outsail the experienced Carthaginians, so they innovated. They invented a device that would change naval warfare forever, the corvus, which means crow or raven in Latin. It was a massive, spiked boarding bridge, about 36 feet long, mounted on the front of their ships. The plan was simple and brutally Roman: get close to an enemy ship, drop the corvus, and let its heavy spike slam into the enemy deck, locking the two ships together. This effectively turned a naval battle into a land battle on the water, allowing their superior legionaries to swarm across and do what they did best. The corvus was an instant success. In 260 BC, at the Battle of Mylae, the new Roman fleet met the Carthaginian navy. The Carthaginian sailors, confident in their superior skill, were shocked when the Romans slammed these bridges onto their decks. The battle was a resounding Roman victory, their first ever at sea. The corvus was a game-changer, and it terrified the Carthaginians. Feeling emboldened, Rome decided to take the fight directly to Carthage. They assembled a massive fleet to invade North Africa itself. But here, the war took a disastrous turn for Rome. While they initially found success on African soil, their army was eventually crushed, and their consul, Regulus, was captured. Then, disaster struck at sea. A huge Roman fleet, evacuating the survivors, was caught in a massive storm off the coast of Sicily and was almost completely destroyed. We're talking hundreds of ships and tens of thousands of men lost in a single day. This became a horrifying pattern for Rome. They would spend years rebuilding their fleet, only to lose it again, not just to the enemy, but to the weather. The heavy corvus made their ships top-heavy and unstable in rough seas. Another fleet was wrecked in a storm, and another. The loss of life and resources was staggering. It seemed like the gods of the sea were on Carthage's side. After these repeated catastrophes, a weary Rome gave up on its fleet for several years, and the war settled into a grueling stalemate. focused on a few Carthaginian strongholds in western Sicily. This is where one of the great figures of the war emerges. And no, it's not Hannibal, it's his father, Hamilcar Barca. Hamilcar was a brilliant general who took command of the Carthaginian forces in Sicily. For years he waged a masterful guerrilla war from his mountain strongholds, launching raids, keeping the Roman legions tied down and preventing them from taking the entire island. He was a thorn in Rome's side, a symbol of Carthaginian resistance. But while Hamilcar was brilliant on land, the war would ultimately be decided at sea. After years of exhaustion, Rome made one last, desperate gamble. The state was bankrupt, so the wealthiest Roman citizens pooled their private fortunes to finance one final fleet. And this time, they learned from their mistakes. They built lighter, more nimble ships, and they abandoned the clumsy corvus. They had spent 2 decades at sea, and they were no longer amateurs. They had become skilled sailors in their own right. In 241 BC, this new Roman fleet met the Carthaginian navy at the Aegates Islands, off the western coast of Sicily. The Carthaginian ships were heavily laden with supplies for Hamilcar's army and were undermanned. The newly agile Roman ships, commanded by a skilled consul, surrounded and systematically destroyed them. It was a total, decisive victory for Rome. With its fleet shattered, Carthage could no longer resupply Hamilcar in Sicily. They had no choice but to sue for peace. The terms were harsh. Carthage had to abandon Sicily completely, release all Roman prisoners without ransom, and pay a massive indemnity, huge sum of silver that would cripple its finances for years. The First Punic War was over. It was one of the longest and most costly wars of antiquity. Both sides suffered hundreds of thousands of casualties, but in the end, Rome had won. They had transformed from a land power into a master of both land and sea. They now controlled Sicily, their first overseas province, which marked the beginning of the Roman Empire's expansion. But the story doesn't end there. The peace treaty created deep bitterness in Carthage. Hamilcar Barca, forced to surrender despite never being defeated in battle, harbored a deep resentment towards Rome, and it's said that he made his young son swear a sacred oath to always be an enemy of Rome. That son's name was Hannibal. The stage was now set for an even greater, more famous conflict. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the First Punic War. It's a story of incredible resilience, innovation, and sacrifice that truly changed the course of history. If you enjoyed this, please hit that like button, subscribe for more epic history, and ring that notification bell. Let me know in the comments what you think. Did Rome win because of the Corvus or their sheer determination? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.